Hi, I'm Rick Jenkins. I'm the publisher at GSA Business Report, and welcome to another episode of Coffee With. And today we're having coffee with Carlos Phillips. Carlos, welcome.
Rick, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming by. Carlos is the president and the CEO at the Greenville Chamber of Commerce. And Carlos, you have been in town, I believe, for what, 4 years now?
4 years this month.
Is it home?
It is home.
It's become home. And before this, you're from, well, you're not from, but you worked in Louisville, Kentucky right before this.
I worked in Louisville, Kentucky, and I am a native Kentuckian.
Yeah, I know you are as well as I am. I'm a native Kentuckian as well. As a matter of fact, Carlos and I went to college together at the University of Kentucky at the same time. We didn't know each other, but we were there in mid to late 80s, right?
We were.
And Carlos was a football player, and I was not.
Well, I was a student athlete.
You were a student athlete.
Yes.
Right. You were on the football field, man. He played football. And your son, and we're getting off the track, but I think this is well worth sharing. Your son is going to the University of Kentucky this year, or next year.
He is. Well, he enrolled in January.
Okay.
So he early enrolled.
Oh, he early enrolled.
And he had his first spring practice yesterday at the University of Kentucky.
And how did that go?
He said it went well.
I bet.
He said it went well.
Wow. He's a great athlete, I hear.
He's okay.
Yeah. Well,
He's not too bad.
He would have to be. All right, well, let's get started and let's talk some business. You know, you hadn't been in town too long, and I heard you speak at an event, and you said something that I haven't forgotten since then. You said that you got advice early on in your life from, I believe it was your grandmother, who said, be brief, be bright, be gone. Is that right? Was that from your grandmother?
My grandmother, be bright, be brief, and be gone.
Be bright, be brief,
and
be
rarely
gone.
do I follow either of those three.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I remember you saying that, and I have actually plagiarized that, and I've used that a couple times myself. But I know you'll be bright today. We don't have to be too brief, but let's get started.
All right.
One of the big things that the Chamber of Commerce has had going on in the past year is you moved. You moved your office space, and one of the reasons this was so big was because your old office space was Cleveland Street.
Right.
And the Chamber had been there for a half a century, literally 50 years, 49, 50 years.
Yeah.
And now you've moved downtown. You're somebody now. You moved down to River Place building.
Right.
550 South Main.
5th floor above Hall's Chop House.
Above Hall's Chop House, which is a great place to be. Tell me about that move.
It's been a great move for us. We were in a building there on Cleveland Street that we've been in for almost 50 years, and it served the Chamber well. A lot of great successes and accomplishments took place in that building on Cleveland Street. But we thought it was time to transition to a place that was more reflective of where we were going and where our community was headed. So we're in the perfect spot right now. Our board got together, assessed our Cleveland Street facility, and decided that, hey, we could sell it, improve our financial position,
right,
and put us in a place where the experience would be better for our staff and for our organization.
You know, I've been down to your place, and it's a beautiful office location. And I've been in your office, and I've looked out that cool window, and what a view you have of the Camperdown project that's going up in the falls, and so I'm quite jealous. If I'm a devil's advocate, and I am thinking about the Chamber of Commerce making that move, this is the first thing that comes to my mind, and that is the old building you owned, the old building you didn't have a mortgage on.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you've moved downtown, you don't own it, you're paying rent. It's got to be expensive to live, to be located where you are.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. How'd you make that decision?
Well, I didn't make the decision, first of all. Again, we had a board committee to help us make that decision. And we assessed the Cleveland Street property. And the determination there was that great building, great bones, but the maintenance had been deferred for far too long.
Yep.
And the capital required to bring it up to speed was not capital that we wanted to spend. We didn't want to spend our investor money on those improvements. We were sitting on a great piece of real estate, and the market was doing really good.
Right. So it was the time. It was time.
It was time. We didn't think the property was going to appreciate much more than it already had.
Yep.
So great time to sell. And we had an investment committee that gave us some sound counsel on how to invest the proceeds from the building sale. And we're using a portion of those proceeds and the interest to pay the rent at the new space. And we have a landlord in Hughes Hughes Development, they really wanted us in the space.
Of course
so
they
it really
did.
worked
So
well.
they probably gave you a pretty good deal, right?
It all worked out.
Of course it did. So when you got the proceeds from the sale, and you're talking about using an interest to pay a portion of your lease, does it cover it all, or are you having to dip into it a little bit?
It made financial sense for us to use those proceeds to cover a portion of the rent. Now, we still have to do the business that the chamber does.
That's right.
And we still have to generate funds that will help to advance our mission and pay our bills. And we're well positioned to do that.
Good. Well, I think it was a good move. It's a smart move. You did have good real estate over there on Cleveland Street. But I'm with you. The Chamber of Commerce, I think if it's going to grow to properly represent the upstate community or the Greenville community, which is so beautiful and so gorgeous and so vibrant, that it needs to be downtown. And so I'm glad you're downtown.
Yeah, it just sets a totally different tone. It's a different vibe.
That's right.
In our
Agreed.
office. People come through and you could just see their perception of the chamber change. We've been traditionally known as kind of your granddad's organization.
Right.
And I think that perception is changing a little bit.
Yes.
Young professionals are engaged at a high level with the chamber, along with some of the older, more seasoned professionals here in town.
Nice way to put it.
Great mix. And it takes all of us. It takes everyone in our community to really make it work and make it a better place. So I'm glad we're in a facility that'll do that for us.
Well, I'm one of those people that they call seasoned, as you say. However, you did mention the young business executive, and I know you all are trying to cater to those. And if I remember right, I've read what we've written here recently about some new leadership programs that you have in the works. And I believe you've got a couple that aren't scheduled to actually start until 2021. Why are we talking such a long runway there? And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, our current leadership development portfolio has been in place since 1973. So Leadership Greenville, for example, we've had over 2,000 people graduate from that Leadership Greenville program, and their fingerprints are all over this community. They've had a significant impact. Our leadership development portfolio, we've had over 10,000 people engage in that portfolio since 1973. So we've played a key role in developing key leaders, stakeholders in our community. But it was time to raise the hood, look at our existing programs, and really try to figure out what is needed, what is required for our next generation of leaders and stakeholders in the community. So that's what we did. One of the outcomes was 2 new programs. One is a program that will target younger professionals, provide some professional development for them, particularly in terms of some soft skills development, things like that. And that's been the surveys and the focus groups that we conducted indicated that there was a strong need and desire for that. So we'll implement that program. I think that is scheduled to launch in 2021. And then in 2022, we'll launch a program that's almost a graduate level course of our Leadership Greenville program.
Nice.
It's designed for folks who, again, many of them have been through Leadership Greenville, but they're very accomplished in the community and what have you, and they really want to sink their teeth into issues and opportunities that are pretty deep and meaty, if you will. So we'll launch that in 2022. One of the reasons that there's a delay in the launch of those initiatives is because there's programmatic elements that we have to work out. We want to make sure we do that right. Funding model will be different, at least for that that graduate level Leadership Greenville program. It's going to require deeper investment from some key funders, as well as people who register for the class. So, and it's going to take us a while to develop the programming for that, the content for that as well. So we're going to take our time and make sure that we do it right.
One of the things, Carlos, since you came to town in the last 4 years, and I have seen you talk many times, and I have talked to you many times, and one of the things I like about you is that you're not afraid to speak your mind, and you're not afraid to say what you feel, even though you're in a position where sometimes you have to have measured responses. And because of that, I have noticed that you have been a strong advocate for a number of initiatives over the last 4 years, and I want to talk about some of those, for the next few minutes. And one of them, I'm going to start with workforce development. And of course, there's not much of a bigger topic in the upstate of South Carolina than workforce development, and you could probably even argue in the state of South Carolina itself, especially with how big the manufacturing industry is and that skills gap that we continue to experience. But one of the things that you have advocated for is for us to be more active as a business community in hiring minorities and more active in hiring criminals that have a nonviolent history. Talk about that.
All right. Well, I think there's a fierce competition for talent throughout the country. So with that, it forced us to look at how can we dig deeper into our community to find the talent that we need. That's not as big of an issue if your unemployment's 4%, 5%, but when your unemployment rate is below 2%, everyone who wants to work and can work, they're working. What we identified though were some people who have some barriers to entering the workforce. One barrier is criminal records. Specifically for people who've been convicted and maybe they've served time for some low-level, nonviolent
They've done their time.
offenses. They've done their time now, they've come out, but when they complete a job application, they still have to check the yes box that
That's
says
right.
they've been convicted of a felony. But there are some offenses that shouldn't be life sentences for people.
Yeah.
But if you were incarcerated and you're released and you don't have a job, technically you're still incarcerated. So how
Yes.
can we get those people off the sidelines and into the game as contributing citizens, and now they become a contributor to our economy as opposed to not.
I bet you've gotten a lot of pushback.
Initially, I think we got a little pushback. There was some misunderstandings as to who our efforts were aimed toward.
Right.
But once we were clearer with that, I think our employer community became much more accepting to that. Also, another statement my grandmother used to make was, she used to say, there are only two kinds of people in this world, the caught and the uncaught. If you look at life from that perspective, then it's quite likely that each of us could have had a point in our life where we could have gone either way.
Right. We could have been caught.
We could have been caught. But there are some offenses out there that folks ought to have a shot at achieving their dreams and then helping our community and our economy grow.
One of the other things you've been a vocal advocate about is raising the pay for teachers.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
I'm glad the Governor McMaster, included in his budget a $3,000 pay raise for all teachers throughout the state. I think that's a great step forward for our teachers, and teachers are talent too, and we want the best talent in that position that we can find.
Affordable housing. I've heard you talk a lot about that.
Yeah, we have a beautiful community, a beautiful downtown. I think there were some unintended consequences of that, and one is the relocation of people from their homes to other places throughout the community. And now, as much as I talk about affordable housing, I think there's also a conversation about preparing people to make more money, preparing them for better wages. And so it's not just affordable housing. I think there's another end to the coin as well, and that is making sure that we're preparing people for opportunities that will help them make more money, and so to make housing more affordable as well. But affordable housing, our inventories are low. We need more workforce housing as well. So we have professionals, young professionals, teachers, firefighters, police officers, and what have you. They're not wealthy. But they want to live in parts of town that are where things are really going on, the center of town, and we've got to find ways to make that more accessible and more affordable.
Carlos, when I came to town, I've been in Greenville now for 16 years. And when I came to town 16 years ago, I think we could still say that Greenville was a hidden gem. We're not a hidden gem anymore. It's a great place to live, but we've got to be careful about our growth. In the next 20 years, we're probably going to grow another 250,000 people, something like that, right? And that's going to present challenges. It's going to present housing challenges, infrastructure challenges.
Yeah.
What do you see?
Well, first I see that the monster has been created.
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
Over the next 20 years, we're projecting a 40% increase in population for Greenville County,
Right.
going from just over 500,000 to around 740,000 people.
That's right.
That is
Isn't that crazy?
That is seismic.
Right.
It is unfathomable,
Yeah.
really. And along with those additional 220,000 people, there'll be about over 100,000 new jobs that we'll have here in our community over that same time period. With that will come, challenges that we need to start working on those now to ready for them. One challenge is our roads and bridges.
Yes.
220,000 more people means there's going to be more people traveling on our roads and bridges, and so we've got to pick up the pace on improving that. I want to give a nod to the Department of Transportation and the work that they did on our Gateway project. I think I live on the southern portion of the county,
Yes.
if you will, and my commute into town is much better
Oh, gosh, yes.
now with the completion of that project, so kudos there. But we have hundreds of roads and bridges around the county that still are in a bit of disrepair, and they need help.
You're being polite when you say a bit of disrepair. We've got a lot of work to do.
I've often been called a diplomat, and so, but they are in various levels of disrepair, and
Yes.
they need help.
Agreed. Carlos, tons of good information. I appreciate you coming by and sharing.
Well, thank you. It was my
I
pleasure.
enjoyed it, and I'm going to end this, and I know what the answer to this is already, and everyone out there also does, but I always end by saying South Carolina or Clemson. I know your heart is in Kentucky, but if you, who do you root for otherwise?
Go Cats.
I love that response. I love that response. Folks, that wraps it up for another episode of Coffee With. Make sure you go to our YouTube page and you can see all of our episodes there, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.